what I've got in front of you there is it's two examples of how, from my experience, most people organize the literature that they're collecting during the research phase. So you'll be reading through a range of different sources, and more often than not, I see people organize the information in one of these two ways. So the one on the right is the classic printing and highlighting, or working on the tab and highlighting information. So you'll read through, you'll say, that's interesting, I'll highlight that, and so on and so forth. The one on the left is a slightly more refined version of that. People will often summarize and take the information they think is most useful out of a source, and they'll put it into a Word document or a notepad, put it into bullets, and then above they'll put the full reference of the source, the name of the source, like that. So it looks something like that. One of the problems with these approaches here is when you've finished, there's sort of a period where you stop and you say to yourself, okay, now I've got to get all of this information that I've marked in some way here into a fluent narrative. And the reason that that's difficult, and the reason from my experience that most people struggle with that, is because the way they've managed the research has not naturally created that bridge or that transition to the writing. Now let me show you what I mean with two other examples. So the one on the right is similar to what we just looked at. If we imagine that this is just, let's say this is one page from a journal article that you're reading. What the students would do is they would highlight parts that they find interesting. The slight difference here with the other one is that you've got different colors. So what this tries to represent here is they found this statement here about the other. And what they've done is they've marked it in blue. And now what they're going to do, when they read the same source or they read another source and there's some mention of the other, they're going to mark it again, but not in any color. They're going to mark it in blue. So they're coding it in a way. And you could do this with letters if you want, A, B, C, or numbers, 1, 2, 3. So that's one approach. Now, I think doing that is much more efficient and effective than just highlighting everything in the same color or whatever. But I still don't think it's the best approach. I think the one on the left here is the best approach. This looks somewhat similar to this one here on the left, but it is different in a fundamental way. So let's imagine that this is our journal article here on the right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read something and I'm going to say, this bit here is interesting. I think I might need to use that in my literature review in some capacity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that information out. I'm not just going to highlight it. I'm actually going to take the information out. And more than likely, you'll paraphrase it because you want to paraphrase most of the information in your literature review. So you could paraphrase it now, save yourself time later down the road. Or if you wanted to, if you wanted the original quote, you could put the quote in your notes and then paraphrase it later. Completely up to you, whatever you think works best. Here we've got the quote. So let's say you've got a quote. You've taken information out from here and you've put quotation marks around it so you know it's a quote. Now, if we go back to this one, what they would have done here, if you adopted this approach, is you would have put the citation or the full reference above. But we're not going to do that. We're going to put it next to it or we're going to put it underneath. You could put the full reference or here's just the citation and a page number so you know where it came from, so if you need to go back to it. Now what we do is we read this and we say to ourselves, what is this about? What are they saying? How might I use it in my literature review? How might I categorize it? What's the theme? And we give it a subheading above. This isn't necessarily a subheading you'll use in the literature review, but it's a way for now to get you grouping information together. So we've got a quote or a paraphrase, where it came from, and we've got a thematic subheading that defines what this is about, that groups this. Now, 2-3 days later, you're going to be reading something else, and you are going to come across a different perspective or a different point, or it may be reinforcing the same point, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take it out, and you're going to say to yourself, I'm not just going to put this anywhere in my notes. I'm going to put it precisely under the relevant subheading. And that's what this is. You notice here, we've got a range of different quotes or paraphrases that differ in some way or may reinforce each other, but come from different places, different years, but are all bound together by this one theme. Now what you're doing is you are starting to accumulate research and organize research in a way that mirrors how you're now actually going to write the literature review, which is thematic. And here's an example of that. I've just taken what we've just looked at on the left there, and this is a final write-up of that very small section of the literature review. And I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but if you look at what's on the left and you look how that manifests on the page on the right, you'll see what they've effectively done, what the writer's effectively done, is they've moved between these different pieces of information and glued them together. They've shown how this is connected to this and so on and so forth. The bits I've highlighted, these are the bits where the writer's voice is interjecting, where they're sort of stepping in and saying, well, this is what this means, or this is how it links to this source, or this person also agrees or disagrees or whatever. And that is effectively, in a narrative sense, what a literature review is trying to do. It's showing the connection between different sources and showing how that research has developed over time. Now, there's slightly different ways, you can do this. I mean, this for me is the way that typically works the best for most literature reviews. If you're going down more of a sort of systematic interventionist route, sometimes it's useful to create a table, and every row is a different source, and you could have a column for methods, a column for findings, a column for strengths, a column for weaknesses, for example. And then what you can do is cast your eye over that whole table and try and find connections between different sources. For example, if 3 of the 6 studies in your table found the same finding or results, that could be a theme, and you could group those 3 studies around that theme. So there's different ways that you can do it. But this approach here allows you to achieve synthesis naturally in a way that both of these approaches won't. If you go down this route, one of these 2 routes, your brain is having to do all the work. This is a way to get your ideas on the page in a way that creates a natural transition to the writing, as demonstrated by this. Now, you may be watching this thinking, I'm halfway through writing my literature review and I'm having a nightmare and I wish I knew this before. And you know what? It's still something that you can work your way backwards and refine. I mean, if you're really struggling with the actual writing of your literature review and maybe you did this or you did this, I would suggest you try and work your way back and try and build the information you've got into something like this with different themes and information from different sources around those different themes. It might seem like it's very time consuming, but it will save you time further down the line because it creates that natural transition you're looking to achieve in the writing. So you can approach this slightly different ways as well. You can go at it exploratory, so you might not know what the themes are that you're going to talk about in your literature review, and you can sort of pull them out as you find them. Or you might know exactly what the themes are. You can set them out already, and then every time you find something, you take it, you throw it under the relevant theme.